So today we are going to focus on ego states. And ego states is part of a model called transactional analysis. It's probably one of my most favorite models to use in communication, conflict, and just trying to understand why it is that you react the way that you do or why people react to you the way that they do. The main thing around ego states is that Eric Berne identified that we all have three main ego states within us. And these are kind of behavioral states. So it's not about your ego as such, but it's more around how you behave and why you behave. And those three ego states that we have is the child ego state, the adult ego state, and the parent ego state. Now I'm going to take you through a process and systematically work through this model so you can really get a good understanding of what it is about. So just for some overview, the child ego state is where we as newborn babies have experiences. So we experience things like hunger and like the fact that we are tired, and we act accordingly, and people obviously then react to us when we are hungry and when we are tired. But it's our bodily sensations that we are experiencing. And what happens sometimes is that as we grow older, we also take on the emotions of our parents, of their child ego state that they went through. So that's a whole different level of understanding ego states. But know that as a newborn, we learn our own bodily sensations. But as we are engaging with the bigger people in our lives, we sometimes take on their stuff just because of how they are being with us and the little stories that they tell us that we pick up as children. Now, the child ego state develops from when you're newborn up until about 6 months. The next state that develops is your adult ego state. And you can see here that is about from 6 months all the way to 3 years old, give or take a few. But the adult is almost like the little professor within you. This is where you as a child are collecting strategies for problem solving. And it's literally how to understand and how to best survive in the environment that you are in. So, we all know that as a child, we work through different things and to see how do we get our way. But the big thing about the adult to understand is it's about understanding the here and the now, more the factual things, what's really happening with me and within the world. And we observe that and we experience that as we grow older. Then the parent ego state develops from about 3 years to 12 years old. And this is literally where we take on the rules that the bigger people set in our lives. And when I say bigger people, I'm talking about people like our parents, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, teachers, anyone that is quite close to you and has an impact on you in your life as you grow up. So this is just in a nutshell what it is. So the child is really a lot about the emotions and the experience. The adult is very much about the here and the now and what's really happening from a very objective, clear, factual point of view. And the parent is the rules that we are guided by. And we often learn from our parents and the bigger people how we are going to be when we are in a parental mode. Please don't see it as you are a child of someone and you are a parent of someone. This is just given names to explain the behavior that is being shown. So that's the first level of the ego states that I want to explain to you. What Eric Berne has also said is within the parent and within the child, we have sub-ego states. The sub-ego states looks like this. You have your critical parent and then your nurturing parent. And within the child, you have your adaptive child, your rebellious child, and your free child. Some people also call the free child the natural child. What I would like to do is I'm just going to show you what are typical ways of being or typical words that the different ego states use so that you can get an idea of how to characterize or how to identify each ego state. If you look at the critical parent ego state, that is where words are being used such as you should, you ought to, you must. It's very often hands on the hips or finger pointing, and there's a firm voice, and one can often feel very judged by a critical parent. So there's a lot of judgment that comes from the critical parent. Then, also on the parent side is the nurturing parent. So here you can have like words such as, I love you, well done, this is amazing, good, nice, let me do it for you because I can help you. So it's really wanting to help and wanting to nurture and care for someone else is the nurturing ego, the nurturing parent. Then you also get to the adult. And the adult is very much like I said about the here and the now. So it's about what is the correct way of doing things? What makes sense? And the adult asks a lot of questions in terms of how, what, when. The adult ego state is very observant. Then we've got the free child, which is words like, oh, wow, this is fun. I want to do this. I'm in, or ouch. And you can imagine it's like different exciting words that they use. And the bigger thing is, come on, let's just do it. Let's go. So it's very impulsive reactions. So that is the free child. Then you have the adaptive child. Now, the adaptive child often makes themselves small. So they will think that they can't do something because someone might be able to do it better, or they wish for something. They will try something, but not necessarily, oh, I'm just going to do it. So the confidence, but yeah, I'll really try. And there's the whole thing about constantly saying sorry. So there's good and bad for each one. But if you are realizing that yourself or someone else is constantly saying sorry and apologizing, it might be because they have a very strong adaptive child within them. The thing about the adaptive child, they are very, very responsible, and they say please and they say thank you, and they take ownership if they've done something wrong. And then lastly, you get the rebellious child. So I'm just thinking of my children if I think about rebellious children. So it's words like, no, forget it, whatever, leave me, I can do it on my own, or I don't want to deal with you, slamming doors. It's that typical behavior from a rebellious child. So this is what we call the structural model. This is where we look at one person, so it's for you as an individual, and to look at where is it that I spend most of my time, and what does that look like? So to give you an example is I know that when I'm in the workplace and when I'm pushed for time, my critical parent is really high. And sometimes it can come across as really demanding and actually quite judgmental if I'm not focused on doing it well. Yet, put me in my family with my much older brothers and sisters, and all of a sudden I become this adaptive child. So it doesn't mean that you only have one ego state and that's all. It is situation and context specific. You might also be in a very good adult space and working through things, and someone comes to you, and just because of how they are being, you are drawn into a specific ego state in that moment. The secret is to understand, when do you move into the ego state? How do you react to it? And why are you moving there so quickly? Before we get to the functional model where we look at two people and their ego states, I want you to reflect a little bit on your own. And the way that we're going to do that is through an egogram. So I'll do my egogram for you so that you can have an idea. So this is what the graph looks like. Now, the first step is to draw your own egogram as a leader or as a team leader as you see yourself currently. So my critical parent, I know, is very high. My nurturing parent is not so high, just because of the facilitator that I am and how I need to engage with people in workshops. My adult is quite high, and it's learned. It wasn't naturally high. My adaptive child is very low. My rebellious child is quite high. And then, which I'm very grateful for, is that I do have quite a high free child in the workplace. So that is what my egogram looks like. So the next step that I would like you to do is to then look at the effect that each of these states have on your team and perhaps even on you. To give you an example, if you look at the engagement and I take nurturing parent, on the negative side, I can go, the fact that my nurturing parent is so low can have an engagement impact that I don't necessarily see when a team member needs me or needs to have a little bit more of a deeper discussion. So it's not picking up on the subtleties of maybe someone is in distress or someone needs just a little bit of encouragement. There are many different things that can come up for you. This is just an example of what I would like you to do at step 2. Once you've done with step 2, then I want you to move back to your egogram and kind of like, how would you like your egogram to look like? So use a different color and draw up again, what would your ideal egogram look like? And by no means do they all need to be equal. So for me, I think my critical parent can lower down slightly to there. My nurturing parent, I'm happy with that. I think if my critical parent naturally lowers, then that might increase naturally. Adult is fine. Adaptive child, I feel I can maybe increase that a little bit. and lower that slightly so that I can perhaps listen a little bit more to ideas and not just say no immediately. And the free child, where possible, I always think free child is an amazing ego state to have and to tap into. So what would your ideal egogram look like for you as a leader or a team leader? Then on the fourth one, the last one for this exercise is, what can you do to make these changes? I'm going to give you one example. So here is that I am not allowed to say no immediately. I have to say that I will think about it overnight. So it's almost like overnight thinking. And that already is one strategy of how I can lower my rebellious child. So for each one that you want to increase or decrease, go and find something specific that you can do to make that happen. Don't just say, be less critical or be less judgmental. That's not really an action step. Get specific. And my suggestion then is that you explain this to your team and that you get each of your team members to draw up their own egogram. Maybe get them to guess each other's egogram as long as they're in a safe space and that you can have a little bit of fun with it. But let them go through this exact exercise and then together as a team start chatting about, when your critical parent ego state pops up, this is what's happening with the team. Or we really need you to dial up your free child a little bit more because that's so much what this team has needed. Use this, it's very practical, and in every single workshop that we've done this, people have loved it and they got so much out of it. So this is the first part of ego states. There's more to come.